Chat, imagine being in the shoes having to face with archbishops, bro. It's like, and two of them.
Suggested that
and these motherfuckers are just powerful lunatics at this point. What's good, Don Crew? We back with another video, man. What's good with y'all, bruh? We have another Zero Cut content reaction. Today we have Subaru's new unique power and why it counters greed. You know what I'm saying? Season 3, episode 3. So, with that being said, bro, hey, I'm gonna be honest, I had some technical difficulties recording this the first time, so we just gonna vibe out.
It's easy to overlook things like Subaru's new power. It's not often he gets new tools added to his arsenal, but with the addition of Beatrice, he's actually developed.
My name is Shaun. If you're new here,
that's 3 one-of-a-kind abilities completely unique to him. One of which we actually got to see
already did that intro, so that's why I almost forgot to do it.
This was just a small part in an otherwise grand encounter, so in addition to all the craziness that happened here, I'll also go over the more detailed past involving Garfield and his mother. Everything this intense and emotional episode
for real,
left out from the light novels.
Nah, that Garfield moment hit different, bro. I forgot all about the ass. See.
Back to the video. Episode 53. Gorgeous title. Covering chapters 2 to 4 from volume 17 of the light novel. Last week I had stopped midway through the Amelia and Sirius fight, so to start there, a whole conversation was cut. Before closing out the fight in a blazing flame of rage, Sirius first made clear what
she's so damn creepy, bro.
To her, it was the ideal of many becoming one. The bonds forged by shared feelings, allowing everyone to experience.
I don't really want to hear her definition of shit right now after seeing what I seen.
Sirius knew Amelia could never obtain herself, but out of innate curiosity to understand it anyway, Amelia still went on to question it. She was truly intrigued enough to confidently ask, "What love?" This only stirred Sirius's anger.
Man, got her. She's a born crash out here. Like Sirius, hey, look at her face.
It had led to the charge that we saw in the anime and the overall.
Oh yeah, shout out to AniNews for the video. My fault. Like I said all that in the first original recording.
Do anything to save her himself. It's because Sirius's authority had taken effect on him. The fear Tina had being Sirius's captive quickly spread in an infinite loop between him, Lucibel, and Beatrice.
Be going through it,
All three trembled as fear became their entire existence. This paved the path for Regulus to step in instead, leading to an even longer rant about respect. You see, in addition to defining the basics of common courtesy, Regulus
I have to say it again, I don't care, like, bro, these two, bro, just imagine being in the shoes having to face with archbishops, bro. It's like, and two of them.
Suggested that
and these motherfuckers are just powerful lunatics at this point.
That, or maybe Subaru was
like
just
literally,
unintelligent.
Bro.
Either way, the argument Regulus made was supported by the same superficial logic as Sirius's. What I mean is that, sure, their remarks may sound reasonable when they're speaking, but that forced rationality was always underpinned by these insane statements nestled within. It was obscenity hidden behind a facade of normalcy. Regulus then went on to directly contest Sirius's idea of love.
That shit don't make sense, bro.
A dead man was fundamentally flawed. Reason being that for him, if the person he loved died, then it didn't make sense to proactively search for another. That was what Regulus believed.
I want to see them be free from their own
the extent of nature as he
mental cages, cause like what the fuck? What did they go through to be like this, bro?
Garbage, and that was a notion that didn't sit too well with her. So, as she swung her chains out of pure unrelenting anger, the ones that looked as if they had made direct impact did nothing as they bounced right off of him. It was as if they were reflecting right off the side of his face. This made it clear that Regulus had the advantage, which made Subaru worried that he might just kill
Get your hands off Amelia!
It would mean the end for him and everyone else in the square. Luckily he didn't, but the fear of facing down 2 archbishops was starting to get overwhelming.
Can you blame him?
Beatrice supporting him
it's not like he got the perfect kid to counter them.
He wouldn't have been able to do anything.
Bro, we had to sacrifice his fucking being.
Lending him her power,
bro, got to sacrifice his spirit
he could stand
to fight them.
Actually do something. It was enough motivation to produce a somewhat decent attack on Regulus. Subaru knew that he wouldn't be able to hurt Regulus, but by at least binding him, he thought perhaps he could hinder his movements. Shamak was then supposed to nullify his senses, but just as we saw,
he looks so
it didn't have any effect whatsoever.
Like, why do you?
It had forced Subaru to use his special ability, EMM. The first of 3 spells jointly developed by him and Beatrice, and the only of its kind to exist in the entire world.
Shout out to
As
AniNews,
an
bro.
original
This
spell
video
activated through
concept is so
transfer of
tough.
mana from Subaru to Beatrice,
And shout out to the person who
Subaru would
recommended
send
me and wanted me
mana
to react
directly
to
from
these as
his
well.
broken gate, then
If y'all
in
want more
return,
reactions,
an
smash the like
invisible
button, man. I
magic
got
field
y'all.
would cover his
I'm logged back
entire
in.
body. The result was an absolute defense which physically cut him from the world itself. It prevented
This ability
anything
is so
from
crazy,
interacting
though. I ain't
with
gonna lie.
Subaru whatsoever. So, regardless of whether it
That shit
was
could
a
be
personal
clutch if it
thing,
could be developed,
any
bro.
being
What?
covered by this invisible field of
At least for
magic
him.
would find
Well,
themselves
anybody,
removed
but
from the physical plane,
especially him.
albeit temporarily. It's what allowed Subaru to dodge Regulus the way that he did. Whereas death was what awaited him had Regulus made contact with him, what happened instead was
see this
Subaru
shit?
completely bypassing him. That was the effect of EMM. Unfortunately, it didn't last very long though, as in its current state, 1 hit was the most that it could cover him for. That said, it was just enough time for Subaru to land a hit himself. An initial physical punch that was nullified completely, then a secondary invisible punch that had actually landed. The first physical punch had provided some pretty useful information, since while Subaru knew that he felt his physical
I'm just smiling
contact,
seeing my boy
the lack of
Subaru
damage
journey.
or
Like,
any other sign
bro
of
didn't have to
really
fight, bro. He didn't have to
happening
show people
made
he
it
on.
clear Regulus
He
had
stand on
damage
business,
notification
bro.
of
Like,
his own. It was as if he existed within his own permanent EMM state. The outcome was vastly different when Subaru's invisible providence landed, since the force from that had actually gone to stagger Regulus.
that's so tough, bro. I didn't even
Whereas
peep
every
that
other
shit
attack
when I was
did
originally viewing it.
absolutely
Like,
nothing.
so much
This
was
one
going on. I
half-baked
didn't
authority
even.
surprisingly did. Now, I know the anime made it seem like Regulus tanked it just like all the others, but by having
Exactly.
it directly contrast with the physical punch made immediately before, it makes it clear that this was different. Somehow Subaru had managed to bypass Regulus's
I wonder what
defenses.
that. What's the difference
His
with
attack
that?
didn't just bounce off like how all the others did. Subaru didn't have time
Hey,
to realize this.
that's
in
what
the
I'm saying. Like,
moment,
look at
though,
these
since his
archbishops.
primary
Like, what are you
focus was
supposed to
saving
do?
Amelia.
Ref, do
Because invisible
something.
providence came at the cost of his very soul, though, the result of using it began to torment his insides. You see, as a forbidden art that exceeded Subaru's body's capacity, invisible providence corrupted his soul every time he used it. It left his body reeling in pain and
I
deteriorated
couldn't
the
do
one
this
thing
shit,
that
chat. I
could
would just
never
want
be
to
touched.
die.
This was the price of using an authority that was
Bro, I gotta give it to my boy. I'm so proud of him. Like, this is a
All
W
of
character,
this wasn't
chat.
as useless as you might think it was, though, since
didn't
this
do
little
so
skirmish
much.
revealed crucial information about Regulus. It had showed Subaru that Greed's movements were sluggish. If he had to classify it in terms of levels, Regulus's skills for combat
W
were just
breakdown,
above
bro,
that of
once
a
again.
novice. Like, Subaru himself believed
Cause that 20
he
minutes
was
go
more
fast
competent.
watching the episode,
To
so it's
him,
like,
Regulus's style of fighting seemed amateur through and through. This provided hope to an otherwise bleak situation, since
can't
lethal
believe I never
attacks
tapped into
didn't mean anything
the
if they
source
didn't
material,
connect.
chat. I was
It was a
tweaking.
potential weakness Subaru thought maybe he could capitalize on. With their
My
fight
fault,
now
chat.
pretty
Mom, I was
much
letting
done,
my mom
though,
text me.
Regulus would go on to speak about
Shout
how
out my
he wanted
dukes.
Amelia. Apparently, he didn't uphold his vow last time, so in accordance with his ideal of seeking out a new partner, Regulus resolved to do so this time. He wasn't gonna yield when it came to living the tranquil life he thought he deserved. He would protect and cherish Amelia in his own twisted way, and he would do so just because it was his right to. Everything was also he could maintain his own small slice of happiness.
That's how I feel about
If
bro.
it meant
Like,
protecting
nah,
that,
fuck
then
this.
Regulus had no problem exploiting the powers he'd been granted. So, once again, Subaru was confronted with more twisted logic, but what terrified him more was the conviction with which Regulus spoke it with. For the first time, Subaru felt genuine fear from Regulus. It was as if the words he spoke were how he truly felt.
Hell
This
yeah,
led
he really
Subaru
meant
to
that
deny
shit.
Regulus vehemently, stating how Amelia was his bride instead. It wasn't waifu like how the anime translated it, but instead bride, which is a lot more fitting given the context. Now, it was in the meantime
I fuck
that
with. Hey, I
Beatrice
told you he
was
stand on
punching up,
business.
getting ready to use
But
the
my
third of their
water.
original spells. They still didn't know how Regulus's damage nullification worked, but whatever
My
this next attack was,
water.
it was apparently very much worth trying. It was right before Subaru could unleash it, though, that Sirius would intervene and stop him, revealing her passionate interest in who Subaru was now. Before, she'd only ever been looking at Amelia and Beatrice, but
Creepy
now she
ass.
was staring directly at
I don't
him.
want you to be interested in
So,
me,
to
shorty.
Subaru, the potential of Romane Conti being this prominent family in the witch cult was always just a joke that he'd only entertain in passing. To find out it was actually a legitimate husband and wife team, well, that was way beyond anything he'd ever expected. It made Sirius's hatred towards Amelia all the more confusing, since her ties to Satella should have made her an object of worship. Her desires.
This is one of the shows that might be a rewatch, bro.
Betelgeuse wanted.
And when it's all said and done, like everything's wrapped up.
Bell rang, which surprisingly enough, Sirius actually acknowledged. Though she clearly wasn't satisfied with the outcome, whatever was compelling her to move on, it was much more important than her reunion with her beloved. She did, however, exit on one final affirmation, once again proclaiming her ideology, except this time mixing parts of Betelgeuse's. Specifically the notion that pain makes you savor life, and life exists so that one can prove their love. So, if love to her is the wish to become one, then this joining of pain was a true expression of it. It was a statement that went to challenge Beatrice's own idea of love. She, however, retorted with her own example, basically saying how her and Subaru became one long ago, yet by not becoming anything like Sirius, it was enough to deny everything she stood for.
Literally.
She had essentially stood her ground and rejected the Archbishop in front of her. Beatrice didn't remain focused on that for long, though, as healing was the main priority now. Unfortunately, Wrath's authority didn't share that healing, so if Beatrice wanted to save everyone, then she would have to do so person to person.
Fuck.
Fast forward now to when Subaru wakes up, and aside from retelling the situation to Al and Felix, the only thing worth mentioning is the special condition.
That's all you can say watching some of these scenes, bro.
As a special type of spirit, Beatrice couldn't accept mana from anyone other than Subaru. It's a condition that's effectively sidelined her, since Subaru simply can't supply sufficient amounts of mana. It's the main burden Beatrice constantly has to deal with. This made Subaru's options very limited, and provided even fewer ways to navigate this. If we were to look on the bright side, though, I guess the only bit of good news was that Beatrice's condition wasn't gonna worsen. She just needed help waking up, something no one present could do right now. Krush would then arrive to discuss what happened, meeting Subaru in the field hospital, since to ask Subaru to come to her would be inappropriate. It's the stage for the meeting that we saw in the anime, which is actually the point where the episode ends. The stuff with Garfield happens all the way after, essentially serving as a bit of a flashback. So, to switch gears to that, the best place to start
Garfield
is at the house.
hit the emotions for
It was
real,
at this point that Garfield was still uncertain whether this was actually his mother or not. The last time he'd seen her was when he was just a baby, and the only reason he was even able to recognize her now was simply due to his vivid trial back in Sanctuary. That made it clear that his mother died searching for their father, so as far as Garf knew, the reunion he truly desired was nothing more than a distant fantasy.
And that shit is so different.
Liara Thompson could not be Alicia Tinzel.
Exactly.
She was just someone coincidentally identical.
That looked just like his mom.
That's what Garfield wanted to think, but everything about Licia's behavior indicated
still his
otherwise.
mama, bro. That's what I'm saying.
That Garfield would remember
still your mom, bro, and she really raised you and everything.
Happened to her.
Come on, bro.
So it all started with her family's debt, leading her to be sold to slave traders while still a child. Those slave traders were then raided by demi-human bandits, and Licia would then become a slave to them instead. They would eventually abandon her after she became pregnant with Frederica, leaving her to be picked up by yet another group of bandits. It was then that she would give birth to Frederica, and that was a time that neither really spoke about. All Garfield knew after was that as soon as Licia became pregnant with him, that's when both her and Frederica fled to safety. It was the move which would result in her inevitable home at Sanctuary. So, this was the misfortune that was Licia's life, at least up until she was adopted by Roswaal. To him, she was described as both mysterious and incomprehensible, a person who always kept her happiness close. The reason why was never made clear, but Roswaal imagined it was the motivation keeping her going. These were the words Roswaal shared one night when him, Garp, and Otto were drinking. Garfield's own impressions were a little bit different though, since for his mother to leave a peaceful place like Sanctuary, well, that just didn't make any sense to him. It made her seem like somewhat of an airhead, especially since it was the decision which he thought led to their death. In the end, Garfield still didn't know what his mother was thinking back then, and more importantly, the source of her happiness still remained a mystery. They were burning questions he hoped at least one day he might be able to find an answer to. In any case, with Fred's sister constantly urging Garfield out, he didn't feel welcome until Fred himself said something. The way he came up and grabbed onto his sleeve, froze Garfield and filled his head with regret. It made him question why he had even come here to begin with.
Nah, cause bro,
the nail in the coffin was seeing the mutual love between Liara and her husband, which to Garfield was affection both unmistakable and unbearable. Perhaps it made him feel like he was being robbed of something that was rightfully his. Whatever it was stirring his emotions, the need to run away was so overwhelming that he didn't even realize he was dragging Mimi while doing so. His grip on her wrist was so incredibly tight that when he'd finally stopped, her arm had actually turned blue from it. It was then that Gaelic would arrive to ask Garf his question, which would in turn reveal a truth that Garfield had never even considered before. You see, he'd always thought his mother was dead because she'd never returned, so the thought of anything else didn't really occur to him. Knowing now that he was so very wrong to make
he didn't know at first
that was a harsh truth that really dug into him.
Amnesia.
Now, it was prior to saying he wasn't related to Liara that there was a swirling torrent of emotion bubbling within him, making him feel sick. As soon as he said what he needed to say, though, all he felt after was loss and emptiness. The reason why he decided not to say anything was because doing so would only cause more harm than good. It wouldn't change the fact 15 years were spent with a different family, and it wouldn't change the fact that 15 years were lost as Licia. The only thing it would do is burden her with the guilt of knowing she left behind something precious.
Exactly.
So, to put that burden not only on Liara, but also her family too, well, Garf knew that that wouldn't be fair. His self-satisfaction didn't take priority over any of that. Sure, he alone would be the one to gain closure, but everyone else would go on to suffer. It was a burden he couldn't share, not even with Frederica or Ryuzu. So, in order to protect everyone else, Garfield knew the best thing to do was just abandon his own desires
he ain't gonna
and
tell
do his
sis
best
either.
to keep everything to
Damn,
himself.
he ain't gonna tell sis
That's
either,
really
chat.
what he wanted to do, but yet again the inner conflict within him was tearing him apart. As much as he wanted to keep all of it inside, Garfield just couldn't find the strength to follow through with it. It was a constant back and forth of him wanting to be the tiger he always thought he was, and the true emotion he couldn't keep contained anymore. In the end, his inner thoughts had turned into some pretty deep poetry. That's where I'm gonna end today's episode, so if you liked what you saw and want to see more, then be sure.
W fucking video, my guy. I'm not gonna lie, W video, bro. But look, this is what I like to see. We get to like really talk about more about these characters and what's going on with them, bro. Cause it'd be hard to do that in a video. You know how I get, but it's like with Subaru, because basically he did break it into two parts. Like the new power, that's tough. I like how he broke that down. You know, so I think that part kind of speaks for itself. But then the part with Garfield, bro, like I ain't gonna lie, watching that, I was like, yeah, it's a lot of dilemmas there. You know what I mean? It's like a lot of dilemmas in that situation, and it's a lot of moral questions that happen. But it comes from a standpoint of like, Mom, I love you. But tragedy happened, and it's not like you can reverse time and reverse the tragedy. And you already went all this time, you feel me? So, and she already didn't, you know, she don't even remember. So it's like, you didn't got no choice but to just let go. And it's like, I'm happy the little short girl, I forgot, I don't know her name off my head. He did the same, but I forgot. That she was able to help console him and be there for him and stuff like that. Cause I know I know that, but that was crazy. That was a crazy scene. That scene even hit me different, bro. I ain't gonna lie. I can't remember when I reacted to that, but that shit stuck with me. I ain't gonna lie. But especially seeing Garfield from when we first seen him in the sanctuary and how like how uptight he was and stuff, and to seeing now, like, oh my gosh, it's when I love shows when they do this, bro. But with that being said, my name is Shaun Down. Welcome to the Down Crew. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. If you enjoyed today's video, smash the like button. Man, we're gonna have 4,000 subscribers. That's tough. I'll see y'all in the next one, man.
I live in a constant state of fear and misery. Do you miss me anymore? And I don't even notice when it happens.